Are we live?
No,
Oh, there
we
we
are now
are.
just live. We're just live now.
We're
Um,
just alive. Hey, everybody.
so, everyone, this is Harmon Cooper, author of The World According to Dragons, book one, which we'll be reading in a little bit.
And
I
which
am
is
your
out in
host.
audio tomorrow.
Oh, excellent. Audio
Yeah,
tomorrow. This
comes
is
out
really
tomorrow.
disconcerting because, like, it's flipped around. Like, you
Oh,
should be on the
really?
other side. No, 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 not the book, as in our titles. Oh,
Oh,
Geneva. Is there
then
anything she can't do? Uh,
now just put us upside down, and then this will work.
please don't do
Hold on,
that.
guys. Okay, yeah, log. If you're using StreamYard, be sure to log in with your Facebook profile so we know who you are. Otherwise, it's just some random. I mean, unless you want to be random, and we will refer you and treat you as such.
Excellent. I'm guessing that this person is half Spanish. But
Hola, ¿qué pasó? Me llamo Harmon Cooper. Yo hablo poquito español.
See, I have a bingo card, Harmon,
Mm,
and it's going to be that whenever you speak other languages, whenever we learn some historical fact, or whenever you forget any of your own books,
I like it
uh,
that way. That's what she said. I'm sorry.
and that's also on the list. That's get crossed off.
That was a joke from Melanie. She will
Yeah,
just roll her eyes at that one.
yeah. She'll probably pop in for like 4 minutes, make sure of me, make a threat, say hi to you, and then leave. It's true Melanie style. But yeah, no, it's in like, so just to kind of introduce all of this is that I have had the absolute pleasure of meeting Harmon in person. And it is one of the most wonderful experiences because he got to see me at my absolute best, you could say, and also at my least cultured.
He was
Um,
glowing. He was glowing with culture.
we went out for sushi, and I learned that I do actually enjoy sushi. I had always thought I hated sushi. Turns out I hate shit sushi.
Yeah.
But there was these like little like sugar beans or something like that, and I was eating the skin off them, being like, "Oh, this is great," and everyone else is taking them out and putting them into a dish. And I'm like,
Oh, edamame. You're eating the
yeah.
edamame.
And I
Okay.
was like, I am not cultured. And I was like, this is delicious.
Well, that happened to me when I was a kid with shrimp. So that's yeah. My dad like he made shrimp, and I was just eating it with the shell on because I had no idea. And he's like, "You're not supposed to eat that part." And I'm like, "Really?" I don't like picking it out of my teeth. So like, yeah.
I had
Happens.
it.
I much prefer with edamame than shrimp, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely a hereditary thing because my uncle in a Chinese restaurant, the little dish they give you to wash your hands, you know, on your fingers, he drank it. He was like, I don't think much of their soup.
Oh no. Hey,
Why
Richie.
am I so blue? Is it the whole screen or is it just my t-shirt?
You
The
didn't
blue
tell me we were
background.
wearing blue. I would have gone blue with you, bro.
Oh, you see, if we had that other hour to prepare, but daylight saving time, I'm telling you, it just
I don't
screwed
even
us.
know what time it is because I just came back from Europe. So I've been like, yeah, I'm like 7 hours or 8 hours difference from where I was there. So
Yeah. What had you in Europe? Was it just a case of, you know, traveling around? Were you just scouting places to live? What was it? Just for your stalkers in the crowd?
it was looking at places to live in Netherlands, and then I wanted to visit Paris because in Tokens and Towers, the third book, which I'm releasing next month, it all takes place in a version of Paris that's populated by bears called Barris. And so I wanted like them to do things like, and the bears are all Parisian. They're all dicks. They're all cigarette smokers. They're all like wearing berets and stuff. And I want it to be like cliche, but like actually cliche funny because it's legit how it actually is. And it is actually kind of like that. So I was like, is this going to be a France going to be like a French stereotype? And yeah, it kind of was. I didn't expect it. I thought it was, people are just being harsh on them. It
Yeah.
wasn't.
No.
But I've been able to utilize a lot of the places, like some of the cool restaurants we went to. We went to a restaurant that had been, in your place, it's not as big of a deal, but it has been running for like 150, 200 years. Like
Wow.
places like that, I'm like, okay, I can use these as cool settings. One of the settings is one of the floors is in the Louvre, and it's Halloween though. And so they
Hmm.
have to go to each wing to get a certain artifact, but everything's alive, but they're also all bears. So like, the statue of Samothrace is actually a bear now. And so it creatively will be fun. No one will read it though. So that's the funny part actually, because
No.
the series isn't very popular. So, at least I believe I'm going to go out with a bang though.
But no, you have voracious readers. You have like a cult following. The people that really gel with your stories, like really gel with your
They do
stories,
gel. They
and
do
uh, and
gel.
and it's a wonderful thing. Like so, I think I remember it was some absolutely insane number. The last time I was talking to you, was it 56 books you had released when we were talking in November? What number
Oh
are you at
no.
now?
Oh, I'm at 70, 75. It was like almost 70 something then. I think my
Yeah,
75th book was Pilgrim 7, which was out in January. And then I just released Proxima Legends, but that doesn't count because it's a re-release.
yeah.
Um, and then the next one that's a new release will be World According to Dragons 2, which is out 2 weeks from now. So we're kind of doing this, and then the audio comes out, and then I delayed the ebook for another week. So I thought it would be weird to have to promote like, hey, book two's out, and then the next week, hey, book one audio is out. I thought it would be smarter to like push that one and then two like that. So
Yeah, no, I think I removed maybe 20 book count from you just to make myself feel better as though it was an attainable goal within my lifetime. So
it's
thank you
just,
for correcting that live.
I always feel like I'm not doing enough, and so I don't know. Then there's some writers like Jez, for example. Like his books are so much longer than mine too. So that's a whole that's a whole different situation because like in one of his books, I would be have done two books, but I don't really like working with a huge manuscript like that. So
No, it
I know
makes
it's
total
good for
sense.
audio though. I know it's good for audio though.
Yeah, well, just like, well, not if you're putting it out of pocket yourself, I suppose.
Oh God, no. What about you, man? Where's your next? Come on, I thought you were writing some hit. Last we
So
talked in November about it.
we talked about it and stuff like that. So you might not have realized, but Jez has recently launched Legion Publishers.
I'm all
And
there. Geneva's been keeping me up on the dark side,
fantastic.
the back side.
So I am the first signed author for the Legion publishers, and my debut will be Quest Academy, and it could be probably out in July. So, but I suppose now is as good a time as any to ask you this question that relates to Quest Academy, because I thought with these lives and doing the first reads, it would be very good fun to add and incorporate all of the people I speak to on these lives into my story. So I have a series of important questions for you
I'm
in
ready.
a in a
Do I need to
super.
get a pen and paper? Are they long
Oh no,
questions?
not
Okay,
long
good.
at all. Don't worry.
You know what I'm talking about though, those questions that are like they'll do at like political conventions and it'll be like, well, blah, 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 this happens and then blah, 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 this happens. Now what do you do? Okay.
And it's not a yes or no, but
Oh no.
so no, very very simple. Would you prefer to be a student or a lecturer in a superhero academy?
No, I want to be like the janitor
You want to be the
who has
janitor.
who has to clean up all this shit and it's just like, God dang these kids, man. Like I just fixed this place up and cleaned it up. Like he's a magical janitor. So he
Mhm.
like, fixed the walls or whatever.
That's
But
amazing.
like,
Do we
yeah.
want Goodwill Hunting level of janitor, or do we want is it like, who's solving all these problems and killing the demons? It's like old man Cooper.
I'm like, I'll go in and finish the math, the like the spell forms on the board. They're like, who's doing it? Like one of these guys, kids is a genius. They're all idiots. It's like, no, it's the janitor. He's been here for a long time. No, I want to be no, not disgruntled janitor because no one wants a disgruntled asshole. I'm just, I'm just, I'm a 9 to 5. I'm 9 to 5, man. I'm doing my job. Like someone's got to clean up after these kids. Like they're always causing shit. So I got a little bit of a
Amazing.
chip on my shoulder, but I'm like, I'll give them good advice. Maybe I give them like one decent line, like, believe in yourself because who else will believe in you?
Oh, just nuggets of wisdom. Just just from the
but
unlikeliest of
flawed
places.
wisdom, kind of fucked up wisdom, because like believe in yourself because you're the only one that's going to believe in you. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, thanks. You know.
But hey, Kristen, and
Hey,
also hi
Christian.
to Lars, who's a fan of yours, Harmon,
Lars.
Richie.
Lars is awesome. He wants me to become Nordic with him, and I'm trying.
Oh
Netherlands is as
well,
close as I can get.
yeah, but no, it's Lars is great.
Lars is great.
So I
Janitor,
guess
but so yeah, magical janitor who,
magical janitor.
however that fits into your system.
I can make that work. I can
That's
absolutely make that
yeah,
work.
not a teacher, not a student.
Yeah.
And then the twist
Chatfield
is
is
he's
already in
actually a
it.
student. No, he's not. Oh, Chatfield is that's awesome. What's for dinner?
Chatfield is in it, and he is a absolute asshole. He is a disgruntled ex-military asshole in it, and it's wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, Jay's
Jay
keep
has
asking.
questions. What's for dinner? I don't often eat dinner. I usually eat like a bigger lunch at like 3. And so dinner is probably just going to maybe be some yogurt. Sorry.
Hmm.
That doesn't sound great. We haven't decided on a song yet. We're gonna see. We're gonna see how he does. I
Okay.
might have to make him do a rap.
My oh no. How about
Lose yourself in the music.
how about we just go with a tried and true classic, tequila, where I just
Hey,
say tequila
wait. Who's
3
calling me out?
times.
Hold on. Someone's calling me out on my. All that region is a Nordic region. Ask Lars. Don't call me out on that. I did a lot of research there. I've lived there. Lars is correct. Yeah, I know he's not Norwegian, but he's in a Nordic region that were settled by Nordic peoples. Anyway, sorry.
And there is the history.
As is
Untapped.
As is Ireland, as is Scotland. Come at me, guys. Read some books. Read a book.
So, to talk about your kind of the world according to dragons, would you mind maybe giving us a little bit of an insight as to what it was that you were hoping to achieve with this, why it's sort of maybe different from your other stories, who this might be for? Oh, I'm sorry, I realized that I've asked you more than one question
Those
there,
are
and
the
you zoned out. Okay, wait. Why
achieve.
read this book? Good smiley face, thumbs up.
Okay, so the first one was what am I hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah, sales. Okay.
Ireland is in England. Yes, Ireland is in England. But if you look at the historical, play the game. You know what? Play the game Assassin's Creed. They have one that's about the Nordic invasions of those regions, and it'll help you like encompass like Viking invasions of Ireland and Scotland. Anyway, someone's coming at me with like that. That's a big. That actually plays a lot into this book because I read like 5 or 6 history books about this region too, so I can incorporate some of those historical things into this book, which is something I'm not going to do much anymore in the future because people don't seem to care about that kind of world building as much. But I enjoy it, and I enjoy finding these interesting stories. And so, what I hope to achieve with it is actually it's kind of the first book I'm hoping to achieve like this kind of sweeping narrative that has like an Eastern Western mix. Like we have yokai, but we also have like Viking mythology type of feels and things like that. However, and when we move into the second book, it actually becomes deck building. And because the magic system I designed, I keep trying to tell people, but they don't believe me, it is the most all encompassing magic system that I've ever put together. And so I'm showing you that in the second book because like not only can it incorporate someone who is doesn't use the system at all, it can incorporate someone who has studied it like deeply. And so that second book kind of brings that into it. So he's not only a relic hunter who has soul bound with a dragon who can do certain aspects, he can also then now learn this other system and utilize that with his kind of makeshift way of using his power. It's kind of, I think of it as like a musician who can play by ear. So they can play with anybody. They can play with a hip hop group. They can play with a country group. It's kind of like that. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve. Hey, Don.
So yeah, no, just to delve into that a little bit more, as in like, would you mind maybe giving a little bit of an overview of the system itself, as in like what it encompasses? So we know the versatility and how, people are able to kind of work with it, but what is it? As in like, if you don't mind me asking.
So I didn't want to use mana because people or mana, whatever people use that a lot. And I always try to, and this is a tip for new authors, don't do this. I always try to challenge myself to do something that someone hasn't done or hasn't used it in a certain way. And I think it's almost to my own detriment. So in the future, I will actually be dialing that back. So I use it's a mana system, but I call it Dragon Essence. And it's this power that runs through everything. So like a cultivated energy power that runs through everything. And it is banned in the kingdom, but there are people that work for the Emperor Odonashi who can use it, and the people that have used it in the past. And in the past, they have taken relics and imbued relics with certain powers. Like an example would be like a ring that can animate an object for a certain amount of time. But all of this is lost to the civilization at this point as this story starts because it was banned. And it was banned and it was prevented and it was stopped. And so our main character, Twillo, is a relic hunter who hunts and finds these things. And so that's one aspect of it. But what he starts to learn as we move into the second book is that the people that are still utilizing it in different kingdoms have developed all these other ways to use it. And so it's a cultivatable energy. the system itself, it varies depending on your usage of it, but there are some like specific rulings that work. All these comments coming up are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. There are specific rules that like are like, for example, it has to be unlocked by someone else. So it's not something that's like you can have like a propensity or like an affinity for it, but it's something that is unlocked and then utilized at certain stages. And then, of course, as humans have, there's ways to track those stages, but these are all, a lot of these are lost to history because of the banning, because of the suppression of information. And so the second book deals deeper into that and like this way that people were using it to take like a card and imbue a power into a card, which grants the user these powers. So I hope
Amazing.
that's the soft explanation that I could, that, but off the top of my head, that's where it's at.
No, that sounds fantastic.
There's,
Like,
if you read the book, it breaks it down more into like, these are like
yeah.
the basic rules of it. And then if you move into the second book, it breaks it down into this alternating system. So
So
yes,
no,
in an
that's
interesting
really
way though.
interesting. No,
In an
I
interesting, yeah.
definitely. I recently had this instance with Kev Sinclair where I was trying to explain my own magic system that works with essence as well and
Mhm.
attributes. And I realized how shit I am at explaining things. I'm like, I swear I write good. Read story, it makes sense. Uh,
It's, yeah, I understand that. No one's actually asked me to explain it ever aloud. I have it on paper, and I have like I've had to like my publishers and stuff. I've shown them those things. So that was my first time actually doing it aloud, except for like talking to my wife about it. But it gets too nitty gritty for her. Even she'd be like, "This is all make believe." I'm like, "Well, it's making us money."
So yeah,
So
no, absolutely. So I guess the follow-up question I'd have would be that after 75 books, okay, you now have you've done this quite a bit. You've met characters, you've created, crafted worlds, everything like this. And now you're telling me that this one particular magic system is the one to rule all, as in like it's your favorite in all of this. Does it feel like a challenge in recreating new characters? Or do you have favorites that you just try and recreate from previous books that you want to just kind of like pull into your newest works? Or
I
like,
actually I don't pull in new style characters. And I'm usually always ahead of like what's next. So I'm already working on. I've already signed contracts for the new series I'm doing after. One of them it uses this system, but it's a completely different series. So that's kind of cool because I can double down on my own knowledge of the system and make it even more interesting because I've already utilized it, but it's not related at all to this series. The other one will be a completely new system, and right now I'm doing research for that, and I won't start writing that until August or September. And so I usually with the systems now, I mean, Dakota talks about this something I kind of try to build before. I write something because otherwise, you can write yourself into a hole. And I see what other authors are doing, and I'm like, well, this clearly had some thought, or this didn't have enough thought, and so I can like pick up those things. As for recycling characters, I don't right now because I don't know. There's just so many different kind of characters that are possible. I think like sometimes like there are like as an author you have shades of character where like someone is like I like the way this guy writes characters. Like Jez is another example of that, and Kev would be too because they write like you can write like a British guy who has like a British feel and it's like oh bloody blah 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 and it's like this is so authentic. I could never do this as an American. And but it's a character coming out in like a first person narrative. But I've written first person present tense, third person present tense, first person past, third person past, and so I've done all of those. And so what I've kind of decided is what's easiest or what you goes towards or what readers can feel is less abrasive. So
oh,
the first person is always a little bit. It's a more of a risk in my opinion because it's a little abrasive if it doesn't hit right. If it hits right, it's like the person loves this character, and it's like like it's just you're right there with them. But if they don't get the tone, if it doesn't hit right, it's a risk, and then you're committed to writing a bunch, like I have, and with tokens and towers. So you're like shit.
yeah, no, look, I get that. It's funny that you mentioned about like the Jez and his characters and stuff because a recent thing happened where I was reading his new cyberpunk story, and Jez has this habit of putting in a prologue chapter that is essentially for world building purposes, and it doesn't actually relate to the events of the rest of the book. And this one character, when I read him, I was like, oh my God, this person is terrified. They are weak. They are smart. They are. I was like, this is the character I want to read from Jez. And then they die. And then it moves on to the main character. I'm like, mother fuck. And then just like this angry bastard. And I'm like, there's the Jez character. Never mind. So.
There is that, especially when you're doing first person. The prologue for World of Queen of Dragons, when you mentioned a prologue, it actually, and I don't think I'll do this again. It was an experiment, but basically, this book, the first book, and the second book doesn't follow this pattern. It's written in this way that's like it's a sweeping like overview of what's happening with the character. It doesn't refer to him by name. It calls him the Relic Hunter, and it's like you're watching it from a distance, and then you're up with him and you're doing things. And what I did, which I probably wouldn't do again, is the prologue is the 10th chapter in the book that has been rehashed in this way of this like sweeping overview of this character. And it's the moment he makes this connection with this dragon, and then it starts to how he got to that point. And then once you reach the 10th chapter, you're reading it again, but now you're reading it, you understand what's happened. You understand the characters more and why this actually matters. The problem, I think, with doing that, I like it. I think it's cool. It would really work well in film. The problem with the book is like even 10 chapters in, a person won't remember what they read 10 chapters ago, depending on their reading speed or how they're reading. And it's a lot of bandwidth that they have to have put toward your story to embrace it like that. And so some people are like, is this a repeat chapter? Some people don't realize that it's this way. So that's trying to do things stylistically are something that I'm kind of moving away from, because it was a stylistic choice that is really cool, like in a literary sense, but perhaps in a genre fiction sense, it doesn't it doesn't feel the same way, because it starts off stupid. You'll see when you read it, it's very like, holy shit. And then it's like, now back to how he got to that point, and it goes all the way to that.
But that's
so prologues are risky.
No, but it can still work. And the question, it actually brings me back to something else. So personally, I see things like movie scenes. So when I'm looking at it, I just like try and figure out, okay, why does the person care? Why do we care? Why do we care? Why is this happening? What are the stakes? And I build out from a scene that I see vividly in my own mind. For me, that was third person. I had to do it in third person, omniscient narrator, as in like telling everything as it is. You have gone through very, very different, styles, as in perspectives. And Chatfield had a question there. It's like, what's your favorite POV? Which one's the hardest? So to kind of bring those together, as in like, how do you decide on them? And which is your favorite, I suppose, and which one's the hardest?
Well, it depends on the problem with this question, and in my opinion of it, is it always comes back to genre fiction to me. And it's like the readers that I'm writing for and what's easiest for them. And I often have not really thought about that as much as I've thought about like what kind of art am I trying to create. And so what's changed for me, and readers who've read the first Dragons book will notice the difference, I hope, in a second. I'm trying to write more entertainment and less something that's like artistically interesting. And so the frame of that changes how the answer to that question. Like what's most interesting to me is whatever's the most artistic thing you could possibly do, which I have done some pretty fucking weird stuff. Like that, some of it's actually been published too. And that's what's most interesting to me. But that's not what's going to like let me easily move to the Netherlands and start a life there, you know? And so what works for that is third person. In fact, I don't even really like doing third person switching around characters much. Like I usually try to keep it to one. Pilgrim does that. Calvary Necromancer does that. War Priest does that. All of my my best-selling Dragons does that. All my best-selling series do that, rather than like jumping around characters third person. I don't any of my first person series that have done well have only done well in time. Like the Feedback Loop has done well over time because it was the OG. Some published too. Yes. Yeah. I have done so. So like it depends on it. To me, in my opinion, it depends on, unfortunately and fortunately, the writing audience. So for me, anything that's most artistic, like I wrote this, it's actually online. It's called The Zero Patient. and it was like it was from two perspectives. One is this guy who's been tasked with getting this woman. It's like a dystopian post-apocalyptic book. I wrote it in like 2016. I wrote two books, and it's online. As I said, it's on Amazon. And there's two perspectives. One is a guy who's trying to get this goddess to this other side of this territory. The other is a guy who has gone mad, and it's written in first person, and like all the sentences it's entire chapters of broken sentences because his brain doesn't function in like he's very neurodivergent, and that was fun as hell to write. And I remember my editor at the time writing like he was like, this is too cool to even touch on an edit, but like no one fucking read this shit, and so it does exist though. So that to me, the artistic side of it's more interesting. But to the reader, the third person seems to work, unless you hit it out of the park with a first person thing, which again to me is a risk.
So that is from a business perspective. In a personal preference perspective, which one?
The artistic side for sure, or anything that, because I've written enough that like if I'm challenged to write from the perspective of blah blah blah, that's interesting to me. Like it's like, okay, that's interesting, and that could shift more first person. Like if you're talking about like I want to write from the perspective of a slime or something, like that would be interesting to me. But like I don't know if I would take that risk because maybe if I was on Royal Road, like it could be like the next big thing. Like I fell in love with a demon slime, and now I'm having its baby, and it's like, wow, 20,000 readers or followers on there, and like, but for me it doesn't work. Those kind of risks don't work, and so unfortunately, I gotta do it.
So, like, you have a really expansive career, and like over the last 75 books, I know it's like chasing reader expectations and giving them what they want and finding the balance between artistic and entertaining. What sort of like things have you learned over that journey yourself? Like, there's a lot that you've learned, but is there any particular things that you've kept that you've learned that you're like, you know what? Okay, I've learned this at book 10, keeping that. Learned this at book 44, keeping that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'd have to think about that a little bit more deeply, but one of the things that I've learned is like you kind of get a feel for what works, but like your gut isn't always to be trusted. One of the things I've learned is to read in the genre, because I did read in the genre, and then I got burnt out because I'm writing so much in the genre that I just will edit it in my head when I read it. And so I stopped reading in the genre for like a year and a half, and jumping back into it now, in like November of this last year, I'm like, okay, you got to get back into the genre and like deeply read what's going on, and understand it better. And so that would be one of the things, especially if I was like giving advice or telling myself like at that, at book 30, maybe read more in the genre, to see what's possible. Not only does it help you see what's possible, it helps you see what's not possible, that kind of thing. And then also like, there's our subtle weird shifts in genre that like we only pinpoint later on. Like one of those shifts was from lit RPG going from VR to like, okay, it's just it's a world with stats. Who knows the fuck why it has stats or a system, but it has them. Like, and that was kind of like a game changer for me, because I've written 7 lit RPGs, and I always had to think of like, okay, like what's like at stakes if it's a VR world. There's not only certain things that can be at stakes if it's a VR world. It's like, okay, I could die in real life, or I could be stuck here forever or something. And then some of these newer writers came along and they were just like, okay, we just took that part out. And it's just like, it's just the world with stats. And I'm like, okay. And that totally works 100%. And no one questions it. Like I question it. Like, why are there stats in this world? But like no one questions that kind of system. And that's something that if I had read a year and a half ago, it would have like helped me put things into frame perspective better. And does that make sense? Like it's because I kind of stepped away that I was like, I didn't know about that big shift.
So just
always got to read.
From my
like right now, I'm reading all the skills right now, and I'm finishing up Mage Errant, and I'm loving those. And yeah, so I'm back in, but I had to take a break and read history for a while. And this Dragons book reflects that a little too much in the first book. I'm hoping I can correct course a little with the second book, because it's a lot more action oriented, and now the world has been built, and so now it's like, let's play. But I'm sorry, what was your question?
No. Look, I was just going to say that I completely understand. There's like, if you try and stay up to date with technology, for example, you just see like how it constantly shifts and evolves and moves. Lit RPG and game lit as genres are absolutely going way faster, because if you just blip out for, you know, a few months and come back in, there's a whole new host of things that are popular. Right now, on Royal Road, like last week was Dressed to Kill, which is a seamstress dungeon, you know, prevention lit RPG that has 4,400 followers and only 20 chapters. And I read it. System seems interesting, characters seem interesting, but very bare bones. And I was looking at it going like, wow, it's just the novelty of new things that are getting these kind of things. So it's like, when I started in this, it was the VR sensation, it was the VR boom. And I came in at the tail end of that, where everyone was like, oh, VR, fuck off. We've read VR. And I was like, no, I want to read about a VR where the real world matters. Not that log in, forget about them. Oh, I had a family. Who cares? Bye-bye. You know, kill the goblin.
This is why I actually republished Proxima Legends. And I really encourage people to go check this one out, because I wrote this in 2017. And it was in Jeff Hayes narrated it. And it's one where it's VR, but it actually matters because the main character is the brother. He's the son, basically the son of the Yakuza, and he doesn't agree with what's going on. It's a futuristic Tokyo, and his brother is like a crime lord, and his brother basically makes an avatar to sort of fuck with him because he wants him to stop fucking around on games. So if you've seen what's, and you might, the Netflix show that was like Squid Games, Borderlands, yeah. It's kind of like he was the gamer guy in that. Like, but that came out after, right? Because this came out in 2017. I think the manga was going then, which I didn't know about. And that's one of the reasons we republish it, is because it actually is really unique. And what you're talking about, it's like it's a huge real world stake, because not only are there things coming through from the virtual world to the real world, it's the reason the main character's best friend dies. He's also has his brother who's really trying to thwart him in both places. And it has this crazy cast of characters. Jay will tell you about it because he's been reading it. But the main theme of the story is that. And so that's one of the reasons we re-released it, because we're like, well, VR is not the thing right now, but there are ways to do it that make it intriguing, you know? And it's some of those things are good to take a look at. And that kind of brings me back to like when we're talking to like other authors and stuff, is, you know, some of the things that you've done in the past, like they may not have done well then. It doesn't mean, it's not a reflection on you, and it's not a reflection that you shouldn't finish them or put them together, because that's one of the things I'm starting to do. Like when this book came out, there was 3 books, and I never did a 4th book. The third book came out in 2018, so 5 years ago. And you know, people have been asking about it for years, and I'm like, well, if we're gonna do it, I have to do a 4th book and make it 2 big volumes, right? And so imagine, like, it's 5 years ago, man. I don't remember any of it. So I had to listen to the audiobook to catch up. And then I had to write in the same style I wrote in 5 years ago to match it. So the second volume, which comes out on April 1st, it's really cool because it's like 5 years of like development, basically, between the 3rd book, which is in the volume, and then the 4th book, which is in the volume. And so that's one thing I'm trying to clean up this year and in the next year, is like things that I had abandoned. Because as an indie, you have to kind of do what works based on the money. And you can reach a point though where things are kind of churning and working, that you can fix those earlier things. And kind of like, you know, because there are people like the next one I'm doing is what's Jay saying? You've made. Oh, okay. Yeah. He's talking about Proxima Legends in this comment here. Because it really is like, this guy, it's such a shift when he goes back to his real world, because futuristic Neo Tokyo for a Yakuza guy who doesn't want to be part of that is not great. And 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 there's people that die, there's people that, and then he's like logs back into the game and he's hanging out with like a farting goblin, and it's just like this very like dichotomy, you know. But that's one of the things I'm going to do this next year. I have another series called Way of the Immortals. It was my first cultivation series, and I'm going to do a 4th book for that. Neil Helligers is the narrator, and we're going to put that out in just one big set. Right now, there's 3 books. Dawn read this one too. She likes the character Roger, if she's listening. But there's some things I abandoned, and now I'm trying to fix that as well, you know?
So different kind of change of pace on the question. So you have, like, because this series that we're talking about now, sorry, the first reads with myself. That Dawn is still here. So the first reads, like you have a lot of book ones. What are your top 3 book ones? Now I know that we're focusing on World of Dragons, but what are your top 3 personal, not about royalties or anything like that? As a writer, what are your top 3 book ones?
I think that I know for my readers that's different than for me. So this will be for me.
I'm asking you.
Yeah. Roger is the best. The top. Pilgrim is a really awesome book one, and the reason being is it starts with a epic prologue, like probably the most epic prologue I've ever written. And he's like getting out of the assassin trade. He's betrayed. He's like just beaten down, but his demons are unleashed. He's all this shit. And then the next chapter 1 is 2 years later. And it ends in this really cool way because this guy he's beaten down. He's a former assassin who's moved to like the edge of the world to restart his life and just disappear. And you can't disappear, especially when you find out that you're, the bastard son of the ruler of hell. He did not know this, and he finds this out. And it has a really a big aspect of community building in it because he starts kind of like there's a Witcher vibe, and then he starts like helping the local townspeople do things like hunt monsters or do these things, and the town gets ravaged by his family, his demonic family, and he's certain at the end that like no one is going to like I have to leave, like no one, and they show up, the whole village shows up the next day with food and stuff for him to help him rebuild his own home. And it's like this whole like this broken person who's gone to rebuild, who then because of who he is, everything is destroyed. And then, he of course is blaming himself. And then they show up and they're like, no, it's not actually your fault. And so that I feel like it's a really good book one, because you can read Pilgrim 1 and not read the other 6 books and get like a really good complete story. So that would be one. For me, Cowboy Necromancer is one because it's just really cool. It's just very different, but it's not for everyone. But like the people that get into it, like seem to really get into it, and so that's that. I like that aspect of it. And as a book one, it's the classic pulled out of retirement situation where the pilgrim, he's going into retirement. This guy, like he's kind of like an ocean. I feel like it's like Ocean's 11, but in the Southwest during the post-apocalypse, because it's like, okay, aliens destroyed everything. We tried to fight them. We failed. Fuck it. I'm going to go become a pepper farmer. And then the aliens come back for him, and he's like, well, now I have to go fuck with them because they came to fuck with me. Now I got to get the team together again. And that vibe is such a fun vibe of like, it's time to get the team together, and you got to go find the people that you used to, battle with. And like everyone's in like a crazy situation at this point. You had to go find them. So it's a cool book. And the second book in that series,
Necromancer, right?
Yeah. The second book in that series is probably one of the best books I've ever written, though. So within that series, even the first book it's fine. The second book, because it takes place in a post-apocalyptic fictionalized version of Utah that blends like Mormon lore with the world, and so like Mormons called this area a Deseret, and so like they don't even call it Utah, they call it Deseret. And I tried to blend all this weird Mormon mythology and stuff. Which, by the way, it's not really that long ago. I mean, the Mormons only came about in like the 1850s, and they have mythology. Like, my God, dudes! Like, that's not like it's not like, oh yeah, those guys were like stomping around Rome 2,000 years ago. Yeah, there's some mythology there, but they have some mythology.
Just cross that one out.
yeah, but they have some mythology, and so like the second book really deals with that. So I think those two together would be, and then the final one, I think that. Yeah, my readers would probably say Feedback Loop, but that's because it's so short. It's not like a complete thing. The first book now it is because it's in a box set, but like, maybe actually let's go with this one. Let's just do with like what's right here. I know you said I can't do that one, but I'm really proud of this first book because it goes through a lot of excuse me, mic went out. Very cool things, and I'm stoked with how it came out. And obviously, we're always as authors like our new things are the thing that we think is the best. And so I do get that perspective too. Like readers are like, no, this book was your best, and you're like, well, no, but this one is like me at my best. So there's a difference between your best and you at your best.
And I think it's really, really interesting that the majority of like authors, and this might just be down to like your kind of tenure within the space, but the majority of like, fledgling authors, they write a good book one and then it all just falls apart in book two. Whereas you are like telling me about Cowboy Necromancer or like, Pilgrim or about World of Dragons. And it's like, oh, book two is going to be like blow your socks off. Book two is going to blow your socks off, where you're on like a trajectory where the
Yeah.
stakes just go higher, and that's really powerful. Now, you had said at the very, very beginning that you couldn't write like Jez in the long form, like because one of Jez's books is like two books for you. And if all of your book twos are like amazing, would you not ever think about just writing like the two books and putting them together and just have that amazing outcome at the end of book one?
That's I've experimented with that, and like Kevin and I talked about this too. Like when he had For Creation's Bane, like his book one is basically two books that have been like put together. It's usually the only thing setting me back from doing that is time limitations and contracts, unfortunately, and also that like we don't have the advantages, really, not most indies at least, of like being able to, well, take a 7 months to write something like that, take a year to write something like that, because like the market moves so quickly, and so it's kind of, there's a visuality of it, of like putting something out. Like that's why right now Cowboy Necromancer has 3 full books, and then I've been publishing novellas, and I'm publishing the next novella on March 30th. And the whole reason for that is because like I want to keep the series alive, but I don't want to commit to writing like a 150,000 word book for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm doing is like I'm publishing 4 novellas that come out with different covers, and then at the end they're going to be packaged up as book 4. And so people that are reading along can with a bonus novella as well. So the audio can hit, and people that are just wanting to find it in 5 years from now will see like, oh, it's book 1, 2, 3, and 4. But it allows me to keep it visually like and show people it and promote it. So there's that. That's a little bit of a strategy I've put together to address that. But it's mostly a time versus return thing, as Kevin mentioned. Writing a 250,000 word book is something that would take me like 3 or 4 months. And so at that time, I have enough series. I have like 3 or 4 series that are going, that I have other things I need to put out as well. And so I run into those, into that thing. And so my goal now is just to keep it, for audio, to keep it above like 12 hours and hopefully push to 15 hours, because that's actually pretty fair for a credit. I actually don't want audio longer than that. Like when I see an audiobook that, like I have the book Shogun, and I love the narrator Ralph Lister, and I'm like, dude, this book is 45 hours. How the hell am I going to get through this? But I know people have they're driving, they have a different lifestyle than me, because I don't have as much time to walk around and listen to it. That's all I can do is walk around and listen to it.
Absolutely. I guess one of the other questions is, when you talk about such a rigorous schedule and with so many commitments and things like that, how do you kind of balance your own sort of mental health? And I suppose, how do you keep going? Because it's a very, very strict set of deadlines that you've put out for yourself.
Well, one of the things that I have an advantage of, I feel that other authors don't maybe, is I don't have any children or pets. And so it does take time when you have those things. You have to look after those things. Not that I don't want pets. I don't want children, but I do want a pet. I'm glad right now, because I like to travel and write as well and go to places where I write about. I'm glad it's one less thing I have to deal with. Going full time helped a lot. I went full time during COVID. Kind of like, I have a reverse story for most people, because most people, they were laid off or whatever. They sent me home and I could work from home. And I had been planning to actually, when COVID hit, I had been planning to go full time like a year later. Like I was planning like, okay, in 2021, I'm going to go. It was 2020 COVID hit, right? My God. Yeah. I was like 2021, I'm planning to go full time, because I'm sick of like juggling two careers. And then they sent me home to work from home, and they're like, yeah, just work from home. And the state says we only want you to work 30 hours or 25 hours, because the state's going to pay for part of your time, so to save the university money, or some fucking scheme. It was a scheme. And I was like, okay, so I get to stay home, and now I get to stay home and write. So I'm like, okay, this is actually what I wanted. So they finally were like, okay, we're going to come back. We're going to start testing everybody like 3 or 4 months later. I'm like, definitely not, I'm not coming back, not coming back. And they're like, what do you mean you're not? I'm like, I got they don't know that I write. I'm like, I got a job as like I got a different job doing something. Right. And they're like, oh, okay.
Wordsmith.
I didn't tell them that. And like, I told them I worked for an audiobook company, which is kind of funny because it's true in certain ways. So I kind of got to actually experience what it's like to do this full time. And I'm like, I couldn't change it. So for mental health, I live near my gym. So I go to my gym like daily almost. And they have like fitness classes, yoga classes. That helps a lot. I've also been doing this for so long that like, sometimes I get to the point where I'm beating myself up, like you should be plotting, you should be doing this, but I do it every single day for hours upon hours, that it's just kind of natural to me. And so one thing I would tell writers is to like once you get to that point, trust your instinct a little bit, because you don't want a negative voice in your head, like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Like, this is what I do for a living full time. And like, it has, for some reason it works. And so like, I've got to the point where, like a doctor, like gets to the point where it's like, well, he knows how to do the surgery, now he's perfected it. He's like, gotten to a point where it's just like, it's never going to be like, you're doing it passively, but it's like, I know exactly what I'm doing. There's no fear involved. Like, I have no problem ending a book. I have no problem starting a book. Dimitri, I'm going to get back to you on an email. I have no problem. Like,
I thought he called us beautiful breasts, and I was like, the fuck? Is he calling us a pair of tits? Sorry.
But like, because a lot of first-time authors have that, like, oh, this is my first book and I had to end it, or like I have no, trust your instinct is such a big thing. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, Chatfield, is trust in that instinct for your own work habit, because especially you, man, you know what you're doing by now. And like, we always try to fix it or fix something that doesn't need to be fixed, right? Like, I just ordered a timer for myself because I'm like, okay, you need to focus better. So the timer came in the mail and I'm like, all right, I'm going to try using this timer to focus. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll try something new. But like, we also kind of know who we are and what works. So for balance, any type of exercise is really helpful, and any type of like yoga. Like, I love yoga classes because I've been doing yoga for 20 years, and I can just plot in the class. And it's not what you're supposed to do in yoga. I understand that completely. You're supposed to be, mind, body, whatever. I'll just like be plotting my books. I'll be like in downward dog, just like, okay, what could happen next? And it's just a chance for me to not have a screen around, to be completely like breathing and focused on my body's doing something else. I've been doing it literally since like 2002. And so I know my body already knows what the moves are. It's not like, and so things like that. And also doing it full time. It's the option. So exercise, some type of spiritual practice if it helps you, and do it full time, which a lot of people can't. And I get that. Mind, body, and plot. That's the name of our self-help book, Chatfield, that we're going to write one day for authors: Mind, Body, and Plot. And then we're just going to put Ryan.
The way there's hot yoga, we could have Harmon yoga. So I think it could just be all of us weeping in child's pose while you scream at us to dictate.
Dictate your child's pose and think of what you're actually writing. Hey, that's one. Like, think of what you're writing. I used to not think of what I'm writing, and now I do. So, or think of like think of like what you're actually putting out there. Versus I used to just put out whatever came to my mind. And I'm like, what's actually more targeted? And where does the alcohol come in? I don't drink much. My wife is allergic, Jez. So, but I haven't. I haven't
drink twice as much for her.
Yeah.
But nice Paul. Yeah, I currently have about 100 pounds to lose, so that's great. There's an extra 3 inches. Thanks.
You're gonna have a hog, dude.
Yeah. It already is. I'm just now scared for myself. So
you're trying to level the playing field for all of us.
That's it. I got fat to just give all of you a chance.
Give you lads a chance, right?
That's it. Like, I already have the voice, I can't look good too. It's just unfair.
Otherwise, you'll be like a Chatfield. You just look good. You got the voice, and it's too much of a package, man.
No, too much of a package, literally. But Chatfield, his accent changes with every.
Oh yeah,
it was absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's
I love you. Hey, JR, man. Yo, check your Discord, dude. I sent you a message because I've been meaning to chat with you. I hope you picked that up. I love you guys, your story from Vegas, Brian, you and Chatfield. Because so for people that don't know, Sound Booth Theater threw me a surprise party, and which is will be fun. And once you get to Proxima Legends 2, I actually include the cake that they made me in the surprise in the fourth book. Like one of the characters has a birthday, and I'm like, I have to use this cake. Well, it was supposed to be a surprise party for Michael too, but you two got so fucking wasted after the Asian dining experience, up all night, like talking about your dreams, like cuddling each other on the balcony. I don't know what the hell y'all were doing, but like he was just too placid the next day, and so like we had all these plans, and he's like, I had to call it. And now I understand why. After I met you, like you guys were just
well,
till the
yeah,
sun came up. Until the sun came up.
until the sun came up. But the other thing as well is, and I don't come out well of this. I don't come
Yes,
out
we
of this
are.
story very well. So Chatfield, when Chatfield was ordering drinks, I never noticed.
JR, Facebook message me then because I told you on Discord that I don't like Discord either. To Facebook message me. So yes, Facebook message me. Okay, sorry.
Oh no! I was just saying that I had no idea that when Chatfield was ordering drinks, he was ordering doubles, and I
Oh,
kept
he was.
every time I was drinking, I was like, Jesus Christ! It's like they thought the tonic was optional. This is just gin. And then every time I ordered them, they were fine. I was like, oh, this good. And that went on for 9 hours of me being like, no, that's stronger. That's stronger again. And, and like Melanie was aware of this from like drink two, and she was looking at me going like, "Are you stupid?" And I'm like, "It just tastes different. Do you want to taste it?" And
You're like,
yeah,
no, Melanie, you are.
no, you're wrong. So,
I'm not drunk as the drinks like spilling out everywhere.
oh, he has too many videos of me and Chatfield walking, and I thought I was going in a straight line, but it was very, very much a veering kind of fiasco as we went off to meet Dakota for breakfast. But yeah,
Vegas this last year was really fun. My first year I did not have as much fun. This year there was just cool people. I did cool things, and I've convinced JR to come this year. So I'm looking forward to chilling with him, and whoever else comes. And I've convinced Lauren Ryburn. She's the author of the Minnock Loop. Minnock Loop.
oh, cool.
She's coming. Yeah, she's great. She's my homie, and so I think it's a good place for people to come and.
Menard Loop is one of the best Royal Road like intros. So like their kind of author notes are like the best I've ever seen of a Royal Road author, of just hyperlinks, pictures, embeds, and everything. And I was like, this is really, really cool stuff. When I started out, I tried to base my stuff on how they present things because they had like the best formatting on Royal Road. So that's really cool.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's really bright, and I talked to her on Discord a bunch, and yeah, so she'll be there as well because she wants to meet more people, and it's good to see that too. Because some of the Royal Road authors are they're very in their own little bubbles, and they don't really are I don't know if they operate as much with like the self-publishing industry, but it might be also because well, the self-publishing industry is also its own little bubble that like doesn't operate very much with the traditional publishing industry. So it would seem like they would identify more on our side of like the self-published authors thing, but they seem to identify more on like a web serial thing. But the thing is, like, there's just not really an infrastructure of like conventions for that and stuff like that. So the ones that are cool, that talk to me and stuff, I've been convinced, trying to tell them, yeah, you should come to these things and meet people and try to get on panels and stuff like that. Because it's always better, I feel, to have some community or have an understanding of the community. Otherwise, eventually, it's what we were talking about earlier, the genre just passes you by. You might be like the coolest, hottest thing on the block right now, but I've been here long enough to see like that go away very quickly, or the person not be able to maintain it. And so, being around, knowing people, and also authors, like you find authors who have read you or you've read them, and it keeps you motivated and keeps you going. And so that, I think it's all a good thing.
And one of the things, like Royal Road is where I got my start, and it was like when I got to the top 10, like people started messaging me being like, we'd like to publish this. How about this? How about that? And I was like, oh my God, like but Amazon's like for real authors. And it was that kind of mindset of, no, I'll stay in my lane. I'm in a web serial and I'll make the Patreon thing work. And this is the best I can do. And it was only 20 books that kind of opened my eyes to be like, nah, you've something worth something here.
Yeah.
And then it's a case of like, oh, so I think a lot of the authors on Royal Road just lack the self-belief, or like that it's actually not that much of a bridge to climb over to go into the self-publishing space on Amazon. And you see a lot of them that are actually engaging with vanity publishers that might have some predatory practices and things like that, where they're like, oh, well, how do I get a good cover? I don't know artists. How do I get an editor? How do I do this? The formatting. People don't know that Kindle Create exists, or that there's all these various tools that would be able to get them started.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and
no.
then there's authors who have already done it who like know, and if you're in these groups and stuff, you learn these things very quickly. You get connections, and if you go to these things, you really do, because I mean, I don't know anybody that goes to like something like 20K, like you'll probably find your people, or people that you can uh that you know, as they say it, there's your tribe, but like I don't know, that seems weird, but you do, it is like that, and you do find those people, and then it helps a lot, because like some of those people that I like, one of the ladies I met there is now she's going to the UK thing. She just got to deal with Tantor Maggie, and
Yeah.
it's because of meeting her there, and then like I was like super stoked with like what she was doing, because I was like, man, just she's like really doing some cool stuff. I know people I can introduce her to, and it does really actually help. Like writing in a vacuum is only going to get you so far, I believe. I mean, with the web serialist, it is very indicative of the internet to be like this is my zone, this is my kingdom, this is my Patreon, this is this. But like it can always. I feel like we can only go so far in that regard, because it's a lot harder for certain, for like I'm not going to read something on that. Like I want, like I have the way I read things, and you're disregarding an entire audience
Mhm.
in that regard too, because it's like I want to read on a Kindle because like I specifically got a Kindle in 2008 because I didn't want to have to travel with books, and
Mhm.
so I'm not gonna like go switch medium or something. Um, generally.
Absolutely. And like, even if you look at how things are formatted, so that if you look at the serial web fiction, the sweet spot is somewhere between 2004, like some would argue 1,500 words. I don't, and say like maybe 2,500 words, 3,000 words per chapter. And it has to end on a cliffhanger because of the Patreon kind of paywall. Whereas if you are not limited by that in a larger work of fiction, where you don't care if there's a cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, you're able to kind of like write in a completely different style,
Mhm.
which is less restrictive. So you don't have to worry about readers falling off at chapters, which is a lot more in the web serial space. So yeah, again, there's
It very
completely
much is.
different roads.
And it also leads to like that's okay. Let's remember that question. I want to come back to that because I want to add something to what you said. I like all of us. I don't know how I feel so much about the gamification of people's psyche, um, but I'm an author, and that's kind of also what I do. So this is a mixed bag statement, because like the entire reason I have this career is because I've somehow been able to tap into that. I'm lower on the totem pole than others, but I've been able to build a following and respect and things like that. And I'm not going anywhere, obviously, because it's just what I do, right?
Mhm.
And I do wonder about that though, when you're like looking at like, okay, here's my 20 chapters, and okay, here's like my cliffhanger, and here's like the readership, and like you're in one way you're only like writing for a very very small subset of people that are actually like reading something like that. Like most like whatever is a normal reader aren't that deep into it, right? It's like we read books, we read fantasy books. Where's my I don't know, I gotta find that app. But we read things, and we're not like that deep into it, right? But some people
Mhm.
are, and maybe it's a new generation thing, and maybe it's a new world type thing. But it doesn't mean that the other people just all of a sudden don't exist. Number one, and two, I don't like. I see the advantage of it too, because then you can like post your chapters, and you can see like, wow, there's a shit ton of drop off between chapter 10 and 11. What happened? And that to me, it's like, well, that's just data. That's like what
Mhm.
people like Chatfield, people like Tao, people like really look into. but I'm a very much a right-brained ish person and completely have been. And so that data kind of like turns me off, like too much into that data.
Mhm.
So I think there's a fine line. And what I'm trying to do now is that fine line of like, how can you hit those like chapter expectations with a cliff, with like something that's moving dynamically, but also something that's telling a complete sweeping story that's not just rehashing or using like a stat sheet as a way to like pad word count. How can you like actually make it matter? And so the things I'm doing in the future I think they're going to have, I'm looking for a best of both worlds situation with that. Now,
Absolutely.
Chato had a question. What was that question?
Yep. What were the things that gave you the biggest push along your writerly journey?
I'll tell you the things that could have pushed me off my writer journey. Critics are like bastards, and sometimes like when someone's critiquing your work, take it with a grain of salt as to who they are to even critique it. Not that saying that like someone doesn't have good input, but or people don't have a good
That's Michael
insight.
Head. That's Michael Head.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Go fuck yourself,
100%.
Michael Head. Sorry, go on.
But like, so when I was living in Asia, before I first self-published in 2011, and then I fell out and I started a publishing house, and but I was always writing on the side. I was writing literary fiction, and there's this one guy who I was quote unquote friends with, who would read my stuff and just trash it, and I got to the point where I was like, I was about to quit, and so my point being like, don't those kind of people aren't part of your author's journey. They're not part of your creative journey. And he had this dude has no credentials. What does this fucking do? He's living in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia with me. He hasn't succeeded at anything. It's a different. Now, if it was George R. R. Martin critiquing it, that would be like, okay, well, yeah, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. So, if you are going to take critique from people, do know what they're talking about, but also be willing to see that, like, if a bunch of readers or a bunch being like your beta readers, your people are like saying things like, oh man, this is not pacing the way I want. That's the kind of advice that you do take, right? Because it's like, this is a collective of people that are having something to say about this. We see this in some of these lit RPG groups on Facebook where someone, like people are constantly like bashing the Alaron chapter about diarrhea or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, see, now it's like, I wouldn't write. Now I know not to write that chapter, basically, because like you've seen like the critique of it enough that you're like, on one hand, it's good because it keeps something like visual and exposed, and it's like people are debating it. But on the other hand, you see that most people didn't like it, even if it was well done or whatever, right? And so I think the point I'm trying to make is like pushing someone along and pushing me along was understanding the difference between collective critique and understanding the difference between that and a critic. So collective critique is when you look at your Amazon reviews as a whole, not when you obsess with them, not when you post screenshots of you arguing with people about them. Like, just don't get into that lane because it's petty and it only will bring stress to your life. Instead, write the next book and try to do what Brian was talking about here, which is like come out with that cool hit that's different, that's cool. The people that like get obsessed with those things aren't going to be able to do that as well. Also, the people that let some critic like ruin their career. This person there could not be a Harmon Cooper. And there's a world right now, a meta world where there's not a Harmon Cooper because of this guy. Like, that's how bad this dude was. And so, understand someone's credentials.
Well, and this is another thing now, because like I think that as authors, and I think that we're hardwired just as people to zone in on the things that are unhelpful. So I have over I think 1,100 ratings on Royal Road with an average of I think 4.7 or 4.8, and
That's
then I
great.
zone in on maybe the less than 20 0.5s. Why on earth would I allow 20 really low scores invalidate the other 1,180? It's kind of like like the vast majority of people love it, and yet I'm upset because this small, minute, less than 1% that don't. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of us are hard coded into seeing that. Now, in my own personal journey, the first ever review I got was a 3-star that said, yeah, this has potential. We'll see. And it broke me. I didn't write for 2 months. I was only on chapter 4 or 5. And I was like, I'm a 3-star author. I now need to admit to myself that I'm a piece of shit and that this
it's
is not
true,
my
man.
career.
It's
And
true.
I,
You're a piece of shit. No, no, you're not a piece of
yeah,
shit. No, but it's true that it breaks people. Like one of the God, Dante's. What's the fucking book? That guy. That was a really popular. Don would probably know what it is. Now we don't even like. It was one of the most popular lit RPGs. Sound Booth Theater did it. We're talking like 2018. It's called Dante something. Someone will come up in the fucking comments. That author got so bashed on Royal Road that he just like disappeared for good. And this guy, like, this is a huge seller. I mean, it's
mhm.
still requested. I think it's called Dante's Immortality. Somebody in the comments knows what it is. But
I don't
anyway,
think
he
it's
started
Dante's
writing.
Inferno.
It's not Dante's Inferno. But SBT did the audio. Jeff Hayes did the audio. And, I even asked Jeff, like, where did this dude go? And it's like, dude, he fell off the face of the earth because the critique got so bad. And so that's why that's a huge grain of salt. Because someone who's reading on Royal Road, first of all, what kind of
Dante's
reader is that?
Immortality.
Okay, yeah. What kind of reader is that? Like, it's a so, dude, who is reading that, right? And like, what kind of person are they? Like, when you go outside and you're at a public park, not one of those people at the public park probably reads on the Royal Road. Like, these are a very specific type of person that's that
Mhm.
into reading. And not they're awesome because and the reason all these publishers are looking at them and the reason they're doing well right now is because if you can do well there, your Amazon launch does well. It doesn't mean anything about the quality of the book or what it is. It's an algorithm thing. It's like, wow, it was that popular there. They'll go over and buy it here. Amazon's algorithm will pick it up and it'll be popular. And then once Amazon's algorithm pick it up, take it from someone who has had Amazon's algorithm pick up your book, dude. It's just money. It's like money
Mhm.
printer goes that whole thing, and so that's the reason. It has nothing to do with the quality of the actual prose or anything like that. It's that you're not allowed to go biblical on them. So yeah, man, but those same readers can tear someone apart like they did the author of Dante's Immortality. And that dude could just written a second book and no one would have, who would have, he would be on the third book now or fourth or whatever,
Mhm. Yeah, no, and like this is one of the things that I have to defend Royal Road for is because it does build your resilience. Like for
Yeah, for
fledgling
sure.
authors that are just going to Amazon straight out the bat, the first one star is going to destroy them.
Yeah.
Whereas like you're used to people that can barely spell come and be like, your work not good, learn English better, and you're like, what? And
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
true.
why are you like this? And you're like, thank you so much for giving the story a chance. And then they're like, okay.
Okay,
And
asshole.
but like, again, it's but look, the it's a very interesting landscape out there. But yeah, it's an interesting one. There was a question that came in from Paul, and I was very surprised. So I know you all have written a buttload of books. How do you keep getting new ideas for your books, characters, confrontations, and all? I'm a simple guy who knows like 3 ways to handle conflict. I'm blown away by the creativity you all have.
Well, I first of all, it's ass load or it's fic load. Paul will get that reference. It's fic load. Um, okay, so I kind of this is one way that you could think of it. I kind of consider myself like a media vampire. I like constantly have to consume media for ideas. So I have to I play video games specifically for ideas. I read specifically for ideas. I read history specifically for ideas. I watch YouTube videos specifically for ideas. I everything I do has that aspect. Like what if I'm watching a series? I'm like, what kind of character um, would I be able to? Yeah, thank you all. What kind of character would I be able to use uh, from this series that you wouldn't know what it was though? Could be an anime, could be something that's dubbed, could be something that's like a blockbuster hit, And so I store those things a lot, and then I had a pretty long work history. I mean, I started working when I was 16. And so I basically quit to become a full-time author when I was 36. So like 20 years of working with a variety of people. I was a barista for a long time, so I met like a variety of people. Those kind of help shape it because when you're a barista, you see like someone who has to come in every day for their addiction, and you get to know them, and you get to know like their kinks or their what makes them interesting or what makes whatever, right? Or maybe they're someone that you end up dating. There's so many aspects of it. So there's just people. And as I come back to the media vampire part, it's mostly that, Paul. It's just I consume a lot of media for to create these characters that then I do so almost stream of consciousness. Every time I've tried to like really pin down like you know, because like you read these writing books and they'll be like, okay, like write your letter from your character, and then write like your character's complete biography and all this shit. And every time I've done that, I don't use any of it, and I completely streamline like who my character is. And so it could be because I've taken a lot of hallucinogens, or it could be because of a media vampire, or a combination of those two. But I think that would describe it. And also, I'm trying to make fun of Paul in some way. I can't. I'll let you do it. I'll let Michael Head make fun of Paul for me. But that, you know, just to tease him.
But yeah, just to add on to that, like I think that having a breadth of human relationships, of just knowing different types of people and personalities and their kind of histories.
You mean there's more than one type of personality?
Absolutely. Well, not going by some of the stories I've read, but
there's 4. 4 people on this cover. Those are the 4.
But like, I suppose if I was to say, like, you know, okay, who would win in a fight again between Jez and Chatfield? You can immediately imagine their personalities, their kind of things and stuff like that. And that is immediately engaging, because that's how I write my stories. I just pick people that you're like, oh fuck, how would they go against each other? And then that's how you just manage those confrontations. Chatfield would win, but it would be sneaky.
Chatfield would be a low blow, man, and I would take him out. And like,
no, Chatfield would run around in circles until his lungs gave out, and then he'd just come over and take him a few times. Yeah.
That's what the Lit RPG Legion needs to start doing, man. Author fights. Let's just go.
They've only signed one author, and it's me, so I would literally be the reigning champion, so I'm on board with it, unless you count Jez.
And then you could be the referee after. You could be like, you do the referee afterwards. You don't have to do. You don't have to get
ready to rub. No,
do the grease pit again. You eat corn the long way. Just like in and out.
What other way can it be done? Sorry, I've realized that there's an entire purpose to this, and we have not done it for an hour and 10 minutes. Oh my God, what is that? Kill it with fire.
It's just this picture I took for Paul.
Okay. Jay, I don't want to do that. I think you'd win.
This is my spirit animal, everyone. It's a postcard I got at a museum in Rotterdam. I'm going to send it to someone. I don't know who yet. I think I know who.
Just because you love history, I suppose that Jay's comment on throwing hands. Are you familiar with the McNeils, the O'Neill clan, of how the Red Hand of Ulster got its signifying flag?
God, no, and I'm sure it's amazing. Tell me.
Yeah, when they were going over in the boats, like whoever was to first put their hand down on the land would be able to claim it for their family. And in the McNeils knew that they weren't going to be able to make it, so he lopped off his own hand with an axe and threw his hand to the shore to put his hand down to claim the territory, which is why the Red Hand of Ulster is the Bloody Hand of Ulster is the flag for Northern Ireland.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Just so throwing hands, Jay. Yep, we can only do it twice. But yes, I should. Oh wait, God, I only just saw that. Can I volunteer for naked wrestling with Brian?
Yes.
It's going to cost a lot of cookies. I mean, no.
But if you come to 20K Vegas, it's possible. Michael Head might be there. He was there last year, so he might be there.
Yeah, no,
I know some MDT people were there. I know some were there.
I had drinks with him, but he was very, very quiet and tame. I don't think he knew me that well, but he did tell us a couple of goat stories, and it was absolutely magical. Absolutely magical. But we'll save that for Dragon Con because they can't be uttered.
Are you coming to Dragon Con?
I am. I will
see
you there.
Oh my God. Yes, yeah, I'll be there and not happy. I don't like the temperature there during that time. So
I'm going to melt like a candle. So it's not going to be ideal.
Brutal. I wish it was like, why did they do it in winter? Please just do it in winter. It would be like so much more comfortable. But I understand, and it would be so much more comfortable for all the cosplayers too, because some of them are in crazy costumes. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be at Dragon Con. I think I'll see if I'll be there next year, because I might be living in Rotterdam then, and I might not be so easy to travel at that time next year. But this year I'll be there.
Yeah, and I don't know how Michael made that sound like a threat. I'll be there too. And it's like, after all of the naked wrestling with cookies, I'm not so sure that I want to be in the proximity to him. Oh, actually, speaking of proximity and Proxima,
It's
is World
terrible.
According to Dragons linked to the Proxima books? Jay asked an hour ago.
Not at all. It's set in a continent of four kingdoms called the Sagaland, and it's not linked at all. There's no, and it's also, it is funnier in the second book. It doesn't have the same type of humor. This is one of the problems with my own writing, is that like I vary my style so much that I don't really have I was fucking with my Amazon profile, and it was like, what book, they asked me like, what book do you want someone to start, would you recommend to start with for your work? And I'm like, oh man, that's my biggest problem, because like I have funny books and like irreverent, crazy books, and then I have like entirely serious books where there's maybe one slightly humorous character, but it's very, like, Pilgrim's very serious. Dragons is quite serious. Cowboy Necromancer, it's on the serious side, as is War Priest. But then I have a book like Proxima Legends or the Feedback Loop or Tokens and Towers. So don't do that either.
But no, would you not say it's fair to say that you have something for everyone? You're not a
Um,
one-trick pony, and you literally have all the different kind of tones, you have the different perspectives, you have different characters, you have different systems.
what is this? Go back to, hold on. I'm sorry.
Buffalo Bill.
Oh, okay. Put the lotion on the skin, Paul. Yeah, I have too many genres, and so I think that my future stuff is probably all gonna be written kind of this style, so third person, and dialed back some, because it seems to be what people want to read from me, where like the really cool guys and the weirdos want to read the wild stuff, but there's not enough of them. So I gotta please the bigger crowd, and so
Masses.
the masses of monsters.
So I have now, there's a question that came in from Chatfield an hour ago, being like, which historical fact did you recently learn that has affected your books? Open can of worms. Now, caveat, before you start this, I'm going to read the prologue. So you get to think about the historical fact that has affected your books, because I know
Start the
that it will.
prologue. Yeah,
We'll
let's do it.
start
Let
the
me think
prologue.
about this. Wait, keep that. Wait, what's the statement again? Damn it, Chatfield. I'm gonna go
Keep it on
take a
screen for me.
piss.
Oh, do you want to do that? I'll just make a drink, and
Yeah, I'll do that. Hey, everyone. I've been sitting here sipping water, and you know what happens when you do that. Yeah. So
Rum.
I'll send you the video of it, Paul. Hold on, just give me a second.
So how's everyone doing? You all having a good time? Okay, bye, Michael Head. Jesus, I saw why you're here. Just for Harmon. Okay, that's nice. I don't know if it was just like being camera shy, or if he just doesn't want to hear his own book. Yeah, bye, Jez. But thank you for the proper use of ellipses. But yeah. So, sober. Odd change of pace. Well, we're doing our best. And, oh dear. I've been doing my best. Now that does sound like a threat. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Oh. He's back.
Oh.
It's at this point
bubbling up in Jay.
It's at this point that the author starts referring to himself in the third person. So Harmon had to use the restroom. Sorry, guys. This is the point in the interview where things get weird.
Yeah. So the old Kraken. So yeah, Harmon just went to release the Kraken. So
been storing up here.
Yeah, I've 2 empty bottles of Kraken here because I've just been finishing a bit of rum. But so we'll start the prologue, The Relic Hunter, from The World According to Dragons, a progression fantasy epic. So let me start. A trail of blood stretched across the silver-black sands of Isenore's volcanic desert. It led into a cave with a jagged opening that resembled the mouth of a prehistoric monster, one that had been home to terrifying creatures since the Age of Dragons. Not far from the opening of the cave, amidst a pile of sharp bones and the lithic scatter, A mighty shade-shaped batholith rose over the landscape. It cast a shadow onto the relic hunter, whose white hair was tied behind his head, his elven features obscured by a woolen scarf. The relic hunter didn't need to check his mapstone to know that he had arrived at his destination, that the Woven Cree and potential treasure was near. He was at the point now that he could almost sense a relic, especially one guarded by a monster. Was it the dragon essence that powered the object that drew him in? The sixth sense of an adventurer gone mad? If what he had experienced in the past was any indication, it was likely a combination of both. The bards of the Four Kingdoms had penned numerous songs about the fate of reckless relic hunters, the triumphs, the obsessions, the falls from grace, the inevitable deaths. Then there were those who had gone missing, whose mapstones turned out to be false positives, those who had been robbed, beaten, conned, arrested, or held for ransom. Yet worse fates awaited relic hunters brave enough to attempt or to steal something from the cave of the dangerous, man-eating yokai like the Woven Cree. Not only that, the information he had been provided could turn out to be false. All of this could be for nothing. The relic hunter's journey, his hope of discovering something legendary, his life, gone by the time Mother Dusk stretched her blanket of stars over the Saga land. He could be venturing into the cave of a Woven Cree, one surrounded by fresh kills, only to turn up empty-handed. It was an incredible gamble. The thick woolen scarf wrapped around the relic hunter's face did little to prevent a sudden breeze from pegging him with grains of sand. It picked up so fast that he thought for a moment that it would blow him away. He buckled down, waiting for the wind to cease yet again. Over the course of his journey, the relic hunter had encountered several of these impromptu windstorms, ones that could last for several minutes, then simply fall away, as if someone had swept them aside. It was like Vithar himself was conjuring them, the hooded god of fate gloomily preparing another dark poem about a hunter lost in the sands of Icenor, his flesh stripped from his body by terrible monsters. Yet the relic hunter had persevered, and he was here in the shade, summoning the courage to continue as the hyper-carnivore stirred within the cave, the red beast known as the Woven Cree near. The hairs on his back of his neck stood on end. He could always turn back. The relic hunter could simply continue northwest until he reached the trade route that connected with Vendir, seat of Vrizard the Blade, Ravenna of Icenor. Yet up until this point, ever since his world had changed because of events in his youth that he had no control over, the relic hunter had trusted his gut. And his gut was telling him to venture into the cave and see what treasure he could uncover. There were nobler ways to die in the Four Kingdoms, and then there was what he was doing. The relic hunter putting his life on the line for something that might have already been stolen, a relic that may not even exist. It was as brazen as it was foolish, a type of bold beyond insanity. His was a life of risk and payoffs, of sheer luck, yet it was better than the alternative. At least he was still alive, and if he was able to pull this off, his world would change in ways he could hardly imagine. Hesitation. Jaw-grinding, sweat-inducing, clenched fist hesitation was natural in a scenario like this. The cave was rumored to hold the quill of Katsimo, a cursed relic that would provide the relic hunter with an incredible power. There would be notoriety in holding such an object, and it would go nicely in his collection of magical objects. It was worth the risk. Of all the creatures that called the northern volcanic deserts of Icenor home, from the pale-skinned rake of their horrifying maws to the miling, cursed creatures no larger than halflings, yet with the strength of grown men, Woven Cree were the most feared. Standing in the shadow of the batholith, his dark eyes tracing along the contours of the cave, the relic hunter was keenly aware of the risk of entering its lair. He would wait. Even if it took until midnight, he would wait until he was certain that the Woven Cree was sleeping. This would also give him time to monitor the area. He didn't think any rake would come this close to the cave, not with the dead bodies of their companions strewn about, but with these mindless yokai were entirely unpredictable. "Livia be with me," he whispered at some point, a prayer to the goddess of luck. It was rumored that Livia hadn't answered a prayer in well over 500 years, but the relic hunter didn't buy this. After all, How would one know if their request for luck was answered or not? He chose to believe that the goddess was watching him now, floating somewhere nearby, her famously long robes draped all the way to the ground. If not her, then who? It was comforting to know that someone was out there. Vithar, your blessings, said the relic hunter, a prayer to the god of fate who just so happened to be Livia's father. Fate and luck. He would need an incredibly benevolent amount of both if he was going to survive this, especially after he heard the Wolvencree move in the cage, the great beast crunching bone in its teeth. Time passed. The shadows of the battle had changed, growing as they stretched in the opposite direction. Was it a warning? Was the rock formation, or perhaps Livia herself, trying to indicate something to the relic hunter? The Wolvencree's snores came suddenly like a rotting desert thunderstorm. They were loud and booming. The kind of sound only came from a creature that could double as the pet of a giant. This was it. This was the moment the relic hunter had been waiting for. Normally, there was a strategy in retrieving a relic. There were puzzles and various challenges that the relic hunter had grown used to tackling. With the Wolvencree, the strategy simple. Sneak in, find the Quill of Katsimo, and sneak out. It was an insane idea. Yet he was to the point that he was being compelled to enter the cave, guided by a divine force. He had to get the relic. Livia, be with me, the relic hunter said one last time. He removed his boots and moved forward, his traveling gear behind him now, the volcanic sand hot beneath his feet. The terrifying sound of the Wolvencree's snores increased in volume as he approached the mouth of the cave. The relic hunter stepped over bones and bloody limbs, the stench of the dead coming to him in waves. His arms tingled as he spotted a portion of the Wolvencree's body, just the creature's tail at the moment, long and red, hairless and covered in scars. The tail rose from the ground and touched back down, kicking up the silver-black volcanic dust. Pausing, the relic hunter took just about the deepest breath he could. It still felt shallow, his heart rate mere seconds away from tearing out of his chest, growing legs and bolting south toward Padrian Sands. A deep breath. He took another step and came dangerously close to crunching a stray rib. The relic hunter managed to step around it, and he was about to advance further into the cave when he heard some commotion behind him. As slowly as ever, he turned to find a single rake. The naked humanoid yokai was hunched forward, its jaw starting to dislocate as it spotted him. For a brief moment, the demonic yokai seemed confused, but then its skull-like face morphed into an expression of rage, its jagged, doubled set of teeth on display as it released an ear-piercing bark. The Wolvencree was that fast. Within moments, the red-skinned beast exploded towards the sound, tossing the relic hunter backward into the cave wall. Lights out. So that is where we'll stop, as it's at 10 minutes. But yeah, also Paul had to go, and he wished everyone except Michael had a great day. You, Michael, apparently. So obviously, we've nothing to compare that to, as audio isn't out, but I hope that that was a faithful rendition. You bastard with all of the terminology there and the words I've never pronounced in my life. But it was very, very entertaining.
I think the prologue ends just within like a page of that. Yeah, it's almost over.
Would you like me to continue it?
It sounds great. Yeah, I mean, it's just like this is like I'm pretty sure it's just like 1 or 2 pages.
Yeah, no worries. Usually we stop at 10 minutes because of audiobook, like to not infringe or impinge on.
Let's stop there then, because that's a perfect stop. Like actually, it's a perfect. It does end again with he's basically attacked by this creature, torn in half. And then he passes out and he comes back and there's a dragon in his head saying, like, do you agree to soulbind with me? I will repair your legs, but we'll be linked together forever. And he's like, yeah, his whole body's ripped together. And so then it's like chapter 1.
I see it just like, if we bind souls, I can save you. If not, you will die here in this cave.
Yeah.
Do you agree to bind souls? But yeah, no, that's awesome. Really, really cool.
Good reading of it. Yeah, that was, oh my God, I wrote that. So that I spend like probably like 30% of my time on a new manuscript just on the first like 3 chapters, and if there's a prologue, that as well. So like it gets rewritten. So toward like your second or third book, you know what you're doing with it,
Yeah.
and you're like you're plowing through. You're like hell yeah. But man, it's so important that beginning.
Yeah.
So
So
kind of
was I
cool.
saying Woven Cree correctly?
Yes, and it doesn't matter because I actually made up that word. So I actually created yokai for this series. Based, some of them are actual Japanese yokai. Some are things that I encountered in museums in the Nordic region. So like the myling
Hmm.
is one of those. And so I'm like, well, I'll just call them all yokai. Anything that's like a kind of weird mythological creature.
Hmm.
I don't know where that one came from, but that's the yeah. I made up that term completely. So
And what's a rake?
a rake is it is it. I read a description of it in a museum, and it's
Hmm.
kind of like this terrible, like kind of like what a humanoid-esque gray. Like if you look it up online, it's actually kind of fucking creepy. They have like people think
I
they've
won't be
seen
doing
one.
that.
It kind of like it'd be something that would be like look appropriate in Last of Us. Like it kind of like moves on.
Hmm.
It walks on four legs, but it's human, if that makes sense. It,
Absolutely. I'm
and
going to
gross.
imagine it as a green-handled garden utensil because that's less terrifying and works for me. Um,
He was
so
attacked by a garden utensil.
yeah, that's it. And so it's out in 2 days. Excellent. So until then,
Yes,
my rendition is perfect. So get fucked.
exactly.
Yeah.
Until then,
So who do you
well,
have narrating this? Is it Neil Helgers or is it Jeff is or
it's Wayne Mitchell, and
Ian
so I'm
Mitchell?
stoked about that. Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Okay. You're
sorry,
muted.
Sorry. Neil is narrating my next series that's in the same world, but I'm not gonna really talk about it being in the same world very much because I don't want people. I want people to be able to start the other one fresh and
Yeah.
not like I don't want any of that confusion because I know that leads to confusion, and people like. I want people to read it. I don't want like any hesitation. Like, do I need to read this first? Do I need to do this? So none of that. But he's going to be doing that one. I wanted him to do that one because we've done like 10 books together, and so he does my stuff really well.
Excellent. So usually at this point of the evening, Jez asks what people are reading and if they'd like to do shout outs for any particular authors. So Harmon, over to you. Is there anything you're reading at the minute that you're enjoying?
I'm reading all the skills because I'm doing card building or deck building as well, and I'm almost finishing up the first book of Mage Errant and by John
Excellent.
Bierce, and I'm enjoying that. His magic system is like I could never write a magic system like that. It is so complex. Like oh my god, it in terms of like the like it feels like a mathematical magic system. So
Like was it Delve that used to have like the oh my god, get your calculator? We're learning physics now.
it's
But was
kind of like that. So my magic systems are always more like cultivation adjacent. Like it's
yeah.
power that you can. It's not like broken down into like that. But it's really cool to listen to because I'm like I wish my brain worked that way. I
Yeah,
really
no,
do.
I get it completely. There's been lots of times where I've read stories and I just thought to myself, Jesus Christ, I wish I came up with that. And like the worst is when it's in dropped books on Royal Road. There was one which is
Mm,
Evil Eye Hex Caller, which I really enjoyed that was dropped. It was by Lucky Frey. And it was essentially the gods give you a book, like a lore book, and that is essentially gives you quests, and your kind
mm.
of powers are linked to the book itself, and different bound covers represent different levels and factions of the gods and stuff. And I was like, that is so cool! I want this. And but
That is cool.
his god was Vescora, which I thought that's a cool name. And it was I think it was the like thieves or criminals and stuff.
Mhm.
But it was really really cool. But yeah, have you
Yeah,
tried?
I hate when
I
that
do say
happens.
book. I say book. I say book. But
I hate when that
every
happens. When
yeah. Oh
or what really got me, not the content, but Legends and Lattes, because I was a barista for 5 years, and I'm like, I could actually write about opening a coffee shop because I know every single part of what would be necessary. Like the whole other part fine, but like I was like, God damn it! Like, why didn't I think of like? I mean, this is actually something I understand completely. I know all the drinks. I know how the operations would work. I know how to like fictionalize the operations. I know like side stories, and like I'm like, God,
But
now I could never do that. It's too like yeah.
see, I get to
But
incorporate.
shout out.
Yeah, no, like I get to incorporate a lot of my recruiting experience into my stuff. So there's a lot of corporate espionage and like negotiations and back and forth. But if you ever try and negotiate with me in person, I'm shit. I just give whatever the other person wants. I'm like, yeah, here, have it. Go on. Is everyone happy?
Are you
But
happy? I'm happy.
but I guess have you read any of the cyberpunk shared world that Jez, Lars, Kevin, Dawn are working on?
I think it's cool. I don't really read on Royal Roads, and
Gotcha.
I don't want to I don't want to read on that platform as much because I just prefer like my system I already have, and I also do audiobooks too. And
Yeah.
so I'm one of the people that will just wait. Like I'm never ravenous enough for something.
Mm-hmm.
It could be like the next Bible, and I would not give a shit. Like I'm never ravenous enough to like I want to go pre-read or something like that. I'll wait until that time. And
Absolutely.
but you as a reader should not be like that.
No, no, no,
Readers, we
no.
need you to yeah. Readers, we need you to go read stuff. It's just for but it's just for me. It's it's a preference thing. Like yeah,
Gotcha
and I
completely.
also can't understand how like I know people do railroad on their phones and stuff. I don't read on my phone. I also don't read on my computer because like my computer is my workstation. I don't game on my computer either. Like it's like this is my actual workstation, and
Yeah.
so it's
I
just one of those things.
I built a gaming rig, this whole like setup here, 3080 graphics card, the whole shebang. This was my gaming room. I have a projector up there, for watching
Lucky,
movies on a
nice,
cinema screen. And then I got a job. And now
yeah.
it's an office, and now I can't wait to escape it all the time. Where I'm like, oh, I'll just sit downstairs with my laptop, and I'm like, Brian, you invested a lot of money into that setup. You should probably use it for your creative endeavors. And I'm like, I should probably
Yeah.
just open LinkedIn and get back to those candidates. And you're like, oh, so,
I get
but
it, but I'm stoked for them, and I hope it does what they want it to do. And I encourage people that read on that platform to go read it. One of the things I was talking to Jez about is not all Amazon readers read Royal Road, and so there are if you do launch something on Royal Road and it doesn't do what you want, like it does. Like when I launched Fantasy Online, which is now Proxima Legends, I launched it first on Royal Road back in 2017 and it didn't do shit all. And this book has done really well for me as an ebook and as an audiobook. And the new volume I think is going to do even better because it's a set, that kind of thing. But my point being, like a lot of people will test something there and then they think like, oh, this is people don't want to read this, and it's a different kind of audience, and it's not necessarily the audience that's going to buy, and it's also your Amazon audience. In 2017, I tried again in 2022. I failed both times. It doesn't work for me. My Amazon audience will just wait for it to come out on Amazon. They're not that interested in me.
mm-hmm.
And
I get you.
and I actually understand that because I don't. There's no author I'm that interested in that I would be like, oh shit, like I have to put everything. And I know that's different. There are readers that are, and I love those readers.
When Patreon was my lifeblood and Wild Cards was doing really well on Royal Road, I kept looking. I was reading all these other stories, and it's like, oh, become a patron to get the next, chapters. I'm like, no, like as in I don't like pay for chapters. I don't do this. And I was like, Brian, you absolute fucking hypocrite. As in like that, like, and it was just, I was like, I don't need
I
it
get
that
it.
much. I'll wait. And then I was like, oh my God. And then it just gave me a whole new level of respect for the people that were paying to read
Yeah,
my chapters. And I was like, oh my God, like what was it that brought you over
yeah.
that kind of barrier or hurdle? And I was like, sure as shit wasn't the story. Like, what was it? And it was
I agree
interesting.
with that. I totally
Yeah.
agree with that, man. Like, um, and that's kind of who I am, though. I'm kind of the type that's like, and it fucks me sometimes because, like, when PS5 came out, we could pre-order a PS5, and I would just got a PS5, and I'm like, nah, man, I'll just wait a year. It'll be everywhere. It's still not everywhere. I had to buy one on freaking eBay for like $800, $900, and I'm like, okay, you should have pre-ordered because Luke Chamalenko was like, hey, you should pre-order it. It's coming out, and I'm like, man, I don't pre-order these things. There'll be a million of them. I'll be able just to walk into wherever and buy one. No.
Yeah, no, like I thankfully, because I work in the games industry. So like I was like, oh, I'll get an Xbox, I'll get this, I'll get that. And I was able to justify all of that to myself. I was in like,
Yeah.
so do I need a Steam Deck? No, I have a really powerful computer and I never leave my house. But I'd like the option of lying down and playing games. So
They're
and
good
I
for
was like,
traveling.
I was like, that also, like, folds out into a bed and that's a projector. I can lie down and play games. And but I'd like to lie down in my other room, so I got a Steam Deck. So yeah, you can tell that I'm not married and I have no kids.
But I have so much respect for the authors that do and are able to put all this stuff out. People like James Hunter, Michael Head, Jez. Like, man, I don't know how I could do it with kids. Like we talk about my productivity. Like, I just don't know how. I don't think I could. So, unfortunately, there's not going to be a Harmon Cooper Jr., but at least I'll have a bunch of books. So it's my trade-off. But some people seem to pull it off like so easily. You utter bastard.
So Jez sent a picture earlier of him in like a play date center that he brought the kids to where they're all having fun and stuff. And his misery literally fed my soul. He looked so angry and in pain, and I was so happy. Like, it was, strangest erection of my life. But
oh, well, he'll probably be happy to know he gave you a strange erection. So that's good.
It's Jez. Yeah, he's there playing with his nipple tassels, being like, "Tell me more, Brian, in your dulcet tones." But yeah, like, Brian, please post that picture into the Legion chat. Absolutely not. There is a covenant that we are allowed to see each other at our absolute worsts, and we just share our misery. It's a collective misery thing. So we don't put that out into the public. So otherwise you'd see me without the top knot, and no one wants that. They're not pretty pictures. But yeah, I guess you've had a bit of time to think about it. What historical thing have you recently learned that affected your books from Chatfield?
What historical thing have I learned? I think it'll affect some of my future books because I still have a few more post-apocalyptic books to write in the Cowboy Necromancer series. When I was in Rotterdam's really interesting because it was the Nazi Germans. By the way, Nazis are fucking bad people. They were like, we're gonna invade, and the Dutch were like, well, are you? And then they're like, we're gonna bomb, and they're like, they kind of were like, well, okay. And then they did, and they destroyed all of Rotterdam. And so if you go to Rotterdam, it's not like your typical Dutch city, like these little, it has canals, but not like these little like winding streets. It was completely destroyed. So it's just this futuristic looking city in the Netherlands that doesn't look like the other cities. And it's become like an architectural hub because of that. So the reason I went to the history museum there and like reading about like these people, like they got completely bombed out and then they got invaded. And the Nazis just held court over them, and they would like need laborers and stuff. So of course, like we all know the Jewish side of things, they would take anyone else as well from this city particularly to like to labor camps. They weren't the same type as Auschwitz, but they were still labor camps in another country. Not great, right? And so it kind of gave me thinking about like looking at the pictures of after it was bombed, because the whole museum is dedicated to like this is what it looked like before, and then here's directly after, and it gave me a lot of like post-apocalyptic ideas because like when you're writing about like alien invasion stuff, there is going to be not only that from the aliens, but like the government side fighting back. And so you kind of see it in Last of Us too, like the Boston that's been bombed out by our own people trying to disrupt the spread of these whatever, I forget what they call them in the game, but that and so it gave me a really good visual of what that could look like. So that was it. And so it was in person, of course, because I went to the museum, and you see Rotterdam now, and it looks like this like 21st century city, kind of like the architect's crazy. And then you go to like Amsterdam or anywhere else, and it's like nothing else in this country looks like this because of that. But they were also able to rebuild with modernity in mind. So they're like sweeping wide roads and like bike lanes, and so there's that side of it too. That's kind of interesting in like the survival mentality and rebuilding.
Excellent.
So
No, I
that's the
think
answer, Chatfield.
yeah, a lot of the really, really quirky, hostels and hotels that you see over in the, in Holland, like you'd find them there in
Yeah,
Rotterdam, as in like that, the really eclectic ones, whereas they're a little bit more tame in the other places. So yeah,
very
very
much.
interesting. So
Yeah.
I guess any kind of last questions for Harmon before we wrap up and celebrate the upcoming release of the audio for the world, according to Dragons, coming out in 2 days. Any other questions for Harmon before we wrap up?
Some questions. If not, that's cool. Now I will go back to working on Cowboy Necromancer novella and then Tokens and Towers 3. I have to do both of those. I alternate
Excellent.
back and forth. So
Are the novellas from the other Ocean's 11 style characters, or do they all
yeah.
follow the? Oh, excellent! That's what I
No.
want.
No. Let me. They're from the main character. It's always. I don't switch. It's always the main character whose name is Sterling Monadero, and he's so fucking cool. He's the coolest character. Because he's Wild West. He's Red Dead Redemption. He's that whole vibe.
Is he
He's a
also a
tough guy.
necromancer?
Yeah, and the funny part is though and readers that have read this would like it. He's a really terrible necromancer because he doesn't care about he was never in his before all this happened. He was never a gamer type. He never did. He was like a construction worker. So he's just he wants to actually just be a pepper farmer and be left alone. He's actually really into peppers. And so people talk about that. I mean, I did a lot of research for peppers because peppers is a big thing in New Mexico. They have peppers that you have never had in the world are in New Mexico. They're really big into peppers, and so he's into that. But then he kind of gets called upon for his necromant, and so people will comment like he should have done this and stuff, but he doesn't think that way because he doesn't think like okay, he doesn't even think until later on like I should store bodies in my inventory list so that I can just conjure them later and then have like dead soldiers to run around. Like he doesn't, he's not good at being a necromancer, and he'll like admit that, and it's fun.
Yeah. And
Someone
sorry,
said, Jen
Jay put
said
in a
something.
question.
Oh,
We'll
that's
go
not
first.
hard. That's not hard. That's not hard for me. What's hard is three. Three gets a little iffy, but two is easy. Two is actually preferred because I can let the other one, it's like cooking food. I can put it on the back burner and simmer while I work on one. And it's usually, I'm usually editing one or finishing up one while I'm starting another. And so that's the balance I like to do too. If they're too different, then I will do them at different times of day. That can help too. Like this one, I only work on in the morning, or this one I only work on at night. But usually, I have playlists that I do for them, and like the Cowboy Necromancer playlist is literally like famous Wild West music, and like
Yeah.
I write completely to that, so it's like bum ba da 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 da. It's like Wild West music written by the Italian composer. I'm blanking on his name right now. For spaghetti westerns,
Uh,
literally, and I just said playlist.
and so very nice of you, TJ, but we'll still drink you under the table, even though you're cheating. But yeah.
We'll drink you under the table, even though you're drinking Arizona iced tea.
Iced tea. Yeah, he'll go to the hospital with iced tea poisoning, and we'll be
They're
there
like,
being like, "Oh, we
how much did he
disinfected our
have?
nipples." Yeah.
He had enough.
But Jez had a question for you. Is like, do you honestly believe you'll get away with being sober at Dragon Con with all of us again, Harmon?
Oh God, no! I'm not going to be sober there. I'm just going to have to suffer. I just in my normally I can't. Yeah, I don't. I won't be sober there. I think this time I'm going to bring some like different kind of THC chocolates and just because I've really been getting into like they've legalized marijuana in my state and in New York, everywhere in the Northeast. But before they did that, all these like kind of sly companies got into like modifying the molecular structures of THC to make it legal. So it's like, well, this isn't THC 9, this is THC 8. And THC 9 is what is cannabis, right? But THC 8 has a molecular difference and it doesn't cause paranoia. So I tried that stuff and I was like, oh my God. First of all, how is this legal? Number two, this is actually, there is no paranoia. Like they literally are able, because they can actually do research on it, like modify these things into a way that like gives you the outcome that you actually want. So I think this time at Dragon Con, I'm going to be doing a little chocolate because even in Georgia, it's illegal in Georgia, but none of these like various strands are because they're not at all, they're not it's because of a cannabis act that came into place in 2018. So,
Well, if you need a cover, you can just hand them over to me, and if people see a fat guy with chocolate, they'll be like, "That makes sense." So,
so
like, don't worry.
Jez and I were going to have some food for sure. I know we got to have wings with Luke Chimilenko. I know it's going to be, oh my God. Now that I know so many people at Dragon Con, I can't even imagine what this year is going to be like. I probably should like not put anything in my writing schedule for that time.
Absolutely not.
I always
But
try to, but fail.
myself, Jez, Kev, and Lars are staying in the same accommodation. We
I'm
got like an
staying away
Airbnb.
from. I'm staying away from it.
Oh no, no, no. We will hog tie you and bring you there and get you
No,
drunk.
I mean, the first year I stayed like within walking distance, so like you can just go downstairs and walk out. And last year I stayed in the same place as Ryan DeBrune did, and it was like a three stops on the subway there, so it takes like
Mhm.
8 minutes to get there. I much preferred that because it's quieter in that area, and I can like go back and be like, all right, and then like there was a washer and dryer because I mean your clothes get so fucking shitty. I hope your Airbnb has a washer and dryer. Um,
I
check
don't
it.
know. I know that it
You're
has a
gonna want
bed
to,
and a
dude.
fridge, a bed,
It
fridge, and a
probably
toilet.
does.
Yeah,
If it
so
has that
we're
many
sorted.
people staying in it, like check because man, that's a lifesaver. You can like just wash your clothes and like okay, 'cause it gets so sweaty there. It's horrible.
Yeah, yeah. But I feel like when you go to a convention like Dragon Con, being sweaty is kind of like the mantra, as in like you
That's
just
why I
need to.
like 20K. It wasn't. You don't have to be sweaty there, and it's like a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
You
But
know,
the casinos being like allowed to smoke, that was bullshit.
oh,
Like,
so
as in,
gross.
even though I was, smoking sporadically at it, I was like, this feels wrong. You should not be indoors with this. This is horrible. Just one guy with a cigar and everyone just like staring daggers at him, being like, we hope you keel over and die. Like, not obviously, but like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm anxious to see. I'm anxious to see because now this year they've changed the name of this hotel. It's not going to be any less shitty,
It's
and
it's horseshoe, not Bally's. Yeah.
they've done renovations, and I mean, I don't think I could put enough air quotes around the renovations of that place. I mean, the rooms are kind of weird because they're not bad, but they're like this weird vibe, this weird red carpet, this weird like you're
I
just
I
like
I
Diablo-esque.
they gave me an accessibility room and it had like a seat in the shower so I could cry in comfort. And I was just kind of like, did they take one look at me and was like, that man's disabled? Uh, I have no idea what it was, but I was like, okay. But yeah, was
I
you?
did myself dirty because I asked for at the check-in it was like $100 more to do like an upgrade or something, but the upgrade felt like
You
more of a
hated it,
downgrade.
yeah,
Yeah,
because the views were completely removed.
yeah, because the original one like I was like, well, it has views of the Eiffel Tower. Okay, that'll be cool. And yeah, so
Yeah, but
careful
no,
on the upgrade. Don't let them trick you on that upgrade, people. Like,
yeah, no, I might go for the one with the hot tub in the main room because that makes no sense, and it just like for an Irish boy like me, I'm like, this is way like this is notions. I shouldn't have this.
we
Um,
just did that in Amsterdam. We because oh, dude, I got so screwed in Amsterdam. So we like I had a I'll tell you later. I had a situation. I had to book everything last year. So and I booked this place and like there's several hotels named this and I didn't realize that till afterward. So it wasn't in the city center. It was like a 45-minute walk to the city center. And it was on an area that they're now completely refurbishing and rebuilding, right? So you have to walk through construction zones to get to the hotel. And our window overlooked like a construction site and a railroad that they're currently building. Or no, the railroad was functioning through the construction site.
yeah,
And I'm like, I can't. And so I like went down to reception and I was like, look, it's my wife. It's our honeymoon. It's our anniversary. The honeymoon's harder, but it's our anniversary. And like, I booked this 3 months ago. I need something better. And they're like, we have this one option. And it was like, ended up being like 30 euro extra per night and had a hot tub, had all this stuff facing the water. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, we have this other one. It was 250 extra euro per night. And I'm like, not that one. That one's not gonna. I'll take the
so
hot tub for 30.
so Jazz just put in there like Brian knows all about booking the right hotel. So I incorrectly said it in the last live, which was I called it Novartis, which is a medical company, medical devices company, whereas it's Novotel. I booked Novotel because that's where the Madrid conference was, 20 Books Madrid.
I
last
need to go
year.
to that.
And yeah, so I booked Novotel and got out of the hotel. We went for lunch or something like that, met up with everyone, going around on the underground and stuff, subway, and then ended up at the event. So that event, was great. Ended up having a few drinks, whatever. At the end, um, everyone was going up to the rooms. So I was like, I'm fifth floor. And then we went in and it went 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was like, where's the fifth floor? And there was no fifth floor. And I went outside and I was like, what the fuck? I thought I was in the back of the hotel. I was 4 kilometers away from my hotel and had no idea. And I was drunk at 3 a.m. looking around me going like, where am I? So
Dude, I have one that happened to me in Rhode Island. Okay. Imagine this. There's like we had a night in Rhode Island in Warwick, Rhode Island at the Holiday Inn or something, right?
mhm.
And my wife and I went out for like breakfast, and then we drove back to our hotel, and it's a Holiday Inn, and I go into my room, the key doesn't work, and or no, and I'm like, what's going on here? And so when I go down to reception, I'm like, hey, my key stopped working. I'm on the second floor, whatever. And she's like, you're not in our system. She like looks it up and stuff, and I'm like, okay, we were just here like an hour ago. And she's like, okay, well, show me your room. And I show her my room, and like she knocks, opens it, and there's like nothing. It's like it's completely there's not someone staying there. And I'm like, I'm starting to panic because I'm like, is this a fucking dream? Like, what's actually going on here? Like, I'm stone cold sober. I'm at the Holiday Inn. My room no longer exists. Our stuff is not in our room. You don't have me on the registrar. And then she's like, oh well, there's 2 Holiday Inns here. The other one's 1 mile away or something like that. And I'm like, God damn it. Like,
But I was the only person at Madrid that fucked up. I was the
oh,
only
because you
one that
were
went to the wrong hotel. And Melanie was like, if I was there, you would have found it. And I was like, I doubt that was
Melanie,
true.
Melanie.
Melanie in Vegas saved my life. I was trying to find the baggage terminal, and I ended up on a bus heading towards the motorway when I was trying to get my bags because I
Oh no.
followed wrong directions. And yeah, but they found my bag, which was great. So the moral of the story is never go ahead and always trust Melanie.
Always
She's not
travel.
here, so I
Always
can say
travel.
that.
Is she gonna? Is she? You think? Did you say you don't know if you'll go 20K this year? Or?
I will go. I have my rooms booked and I have the ticket paid for. It'll just be like need to sort out flights and figure out everything. So like
Is
dragging
Melanie going?
more than likely yes. So
Oh, okay, cool.
but Melanie and myself, we signed up to do rave, which is the kind of signing the books on the last day. So it's kind of like we kind of have to have books out so to do that. So no
Well, good
pressure,
luck.
but yeah, it's like let's go. But yeah, we bicker and banter, and like Jacob came up to us. It was so funny. He was saying like, "Do you two hate each other?" And we're like, "No, we're Irish. This is how we communicate."
Oh, okay, that'll be cool to see you guys. I mean, I'll see you at Dragon Con, but Dragon Con's not her scene, I'm sure.
No, I don't think she'll be there. Like, I'm still working on her to write lit RPG because I think she'd be brilliant at it. She's a very good writer. So
Um,
like she currently writes paranormal romance, but she actually likes games and like she's a data analyst. So I can totally see lit RPG being something she could write compellingly,
mm.
and more than likely with female MC that'll be badass. So I'd be interested in reading it. So we'll see how it goes.
Come on, Melanie. Well, on that note, Melanie, you got to write a lit RPG. Brian, it's been nice. People watching, thank you. Thanks for reading my stuff, Brian. And Paul, you're a bastard for not watching all 2 hours of this conversation.
I'm so
And
sorry. Like we always say, like, oh no, this one won't go on too long, or like we'll wrap this one up early. And every single one of them so far has been 2 hours. But yeah, sorry about that for the viewers that managed to stick with us. But yeah, love you too, TJ. And congratulations on is it the Dying Breed series? You had your release there of the first book, so well done on that, TJ. But yeah, it's we met TJ at 20 Books. I'm not sure if you bumped into him. He was literally welcome to the gun show. He is ripped. No, yeah, you'll meet him again. But it's like really nice guy. Usually standing outside with a cigar and looking sketchy as shit. Really nice guy.
awesome.
But
Oh,
But look,
awesome.
thank you everyone for joining us. Geneva, you can cut us off at any point.
Bye, everybody. Geneva's gone.